Welcome back to Alabama Business Today. This is your host, Calvin Bacon. And today we're talking to Terry Edeker and Jim Gates. I knew I would do it sooner or later. And we're talking about how to establish your brand. And when we took the break, I had a question that was right on the tip of my tongue, so let's get to it. I was wondering, you have said your trademark is a promise. What do you mean by that?
Well, there's a lot of elements that go into a brand, and you hear that word quite often kind of thrown around very loosely, but a brand really is the sum of all of those elements that make up who you are. It's not only the logo, which, by the way, happens to be probably the most visible component of a client's brand, but it's everything down from your own personal experience with that company, the signage, the literature they're distributing, the website. So the promise is very integral, because that also needs to be wrapped up into the visual and into the copy, into the message, because people oftentimes they look to a company's meaning, not just the visual, to really draw them in, to make a connection and ultimately making a buying decision.
There was a time, Calvin, where the brand was just the mark, brand just like on a cow or cattle, which is where that stems from. But over time, especially today, the brand isn't necessarily your mark and who you claim to be by name. It's who you are in personality, who you are in characteristics. Are you trustworthy? Do you have a good product? Parisian comes to mind when I'm talking about that. Parisian, as a company, when it was privately owned and high service oriented company, there was a great demand. They had 2 sales a year. It wasn't a weekly sale in the paper. And over time, after selling to various different companies, Parisian started following the same model as everybody else and lost their brand. And you don't see them anymore. They're gone. So that's just an example.
Well, since you're talking about that, what about Dillard's? Are they going to fall in the same trap?
Keep on doing the same thing you've always done, you're probably going to get the same as you always have. Another retail example of that, you have companies that carry virtually the same product have a totally different customer. Target, Walmart, Kmart. You see those companies where they've identified themselves by who they are in personality and who they are in characteristic, not who they are in product.
That's right. It's not necessarily so important to develop the next great thing. It's more important to be different, to differentiate yourself from others.
Okay, and so you were saying, I think during the break, that Pepsi is rebranding. Is that right?
They've gone through some recent changes as well. You've noticed new TV campaigns, new look and feel to their packaging, new logo.
Now, why would a company like that, with such a recognizable brand, want to redo it?
Well, this is kind of, I mean, the way that Pepsi is recognized is kind of an interesting debate. We were talking about this in the break, but I saw from 1885, when Coke brand was originally made, all the way down to 2009, where Coke brand's now. It's been consistent all those years. And then kind of beside it was a chart they had laid out, from whenever Pepsi was made. It actually closely resembled the Coke brand, which I found interesting, because I haven't seen that in years, obviously, any time in my lifetime. And it went down, and every couple of years they would rebrand it, and they would try to make it look different, and they would try to change the color. Originally it was the same cursive script with the same red, and then they went through this whole entire process. And then, I've heard a lot of bad things about the rebranding. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but even their new logo.
Pepsi and Coke is a great example. Ironically, I was reading in Fast Company not long ago where there was a taste test done with those who were very committed to the Coca-Cola brand. That all they bought when they went in the store was Coca-Cola, and they redid the Pepsi taste test, and overwhelmingly Pepsi won the taste test.
Right.
But when asked what they were going to buy when they went to the store, they were going to buy Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola has done such a fantastic job identifying themselves as the best choice.
What would you call that? Consistent branding, or?
Well, nowadays they use the word iconic. It's such a high level that people it comes to mind without even trying.
Right. Well, and like you said, they've they've changed their face, Coke, they've changed their face over the years to reflect the times, but their core message, their core values, their core visual has stayed consistent. Pepsi, they have stumbled a little bit. They're also targeting a much younger market, so this day and age.
They made a bad branding decision, or bad marketing decision years ago when they bought Taco Bell, Pepsi, or Pizza Hut, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
That's Pepsi you're talking
Pepsi, and the reason they bought it was they were getting beat up in the syrup market, the brown water, or brown liquid that comes out with water. And they were getting beat up so bad, they decided their solution was to buy some companies that were fast food chains, that they would increase their syrup business. As a result, most of the people that were buying from them in syrup dropped them because they now were in competition with them. So a lot of times those decisions backfire. And
Well,
that's when they did.
Terry and Jim, let me ask you this. I mean, if Pepsi came to you today and said, look, we're kind of in a mess, we just rebranded it, I mean, what would you guys advise them to do? Because I love talking in examples. I think it helps, get the point across. I mean, what would you tell them to do? Stay consistent, change it again, go back to your Coke model? I mean, what would you tell them?
Well, that would certainly depend upon the research and their goals and objectives. There would be a lot of information to sift through to make those kinds of decisions. There's personal preferences, obviously, that come into play, but I certainly wouldn't recommend personal preferences over what's right for their audience. And if their audience is a more younger, hipper type of audience, then they are doing a lot of things to attract that target.
And one of the reasons we lean so heavily on research is that obviously we have our own opinions, but we've got to be able to back up our opinions and expertise with data.
Right.
Because there are many times where we go through the research process and discover that what we thought was the way wasn't really the right way, and for their interests, we needed to guide them according to what was determined by that data.
That sounds like you guys rely quite a bit on research.
Absolutely.
Do you do your own research, or do you get others?
We do. Sometimes that research, depending upon budgets, are provided to us. Sometimes we do our own, so it's a combination.
Let me tell everybody, they're listening to Alabama Business Today with Calvin Bacon. We're joined by Jeff Roberts today as co-host, and we have Terry Ediker and Jim Gates. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.